program is brought to you by First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?
Good evening and a very warm welcome to First Issues. The 2019 budget speech announced the allocation of 8.24 billion pula to the Ministry of Basic Education under the recurrent budget. This came as no surprise because for several years, the lion's share of government revenues has gone to education under Botswana's valiant bid to improve its human capital resources. Some admirable gains have been made. Literacy rates are up from 34% in the 80s to 90% in this day and age, according to Statistics Botswana. But as we know from the just released Botswana General Certificate for Secondary Education or BGCSE results released just last week, less than a quarter of students that are meant to be proceeding to tertiary institutions this year achieved grade C or better in exams written last year. A truly frightening state of affairs. The World Bank has long identified this as being a regional problem. In their Africa Pulse report, they say despite having the largest share of spending on education in developing regions, Sub-Saharan Africa still has the least skilled workforce in the world. We speak to World Bank country representative for Botswana, Xavier Furtado, to find out why the money being poured into education is not resulting in the skills, innovation, productivity levels and more that this country so desperately needs to accelerate economic growth.
The simple answer is that we don't know. We don't know, in fact, how those funds are being spent. We've not done any good diagnostic work in a very long time to understand how the allocations are being used for either building new schools or maintenance of existing infrastructure or purchasing new textbooks or the training of teachers to teach curriculums effectively. So that's in fact why the bank is so concerned about the level of investment versus what we can see are the declining outcomes in both science and math. So what we're trying to do now is understand the linkages. How are the funds being managed? But in the coming year, the World Bank will be undertaking a public expenditure review in the education sector in collaboration with our colleagues at UNICEF.
I know you'll be looking to find out exactly to come up with more specific interventions with the review, but any ideas now as to what could be done as a quick fix with regards to investment into education?
One of the challenges we've noticed, and the government's noticed this as well, is that the quality of education infrastructure, schools in particular, the investments were made, but now we find them deteriorated in the countryside in particular and in peri-urban areas. This suggests that the capital investments are being made, but there's not enough of an allocation to support running costs. And that could be an area, perhaps, where improvements could be made. Also, in supporting curriculum reform, as well as training teachers to effectively teach that new curriculum, there too, there could be a greater investment in ensuring that teachers are trained effectively in an ongoing way throughout the course of their careers, so that education, as we know, is a lifelong endeavor. Skills are cumulative, they start at a very young age. So supporting teachers in constantly upgrading their skills could be another important area of reform.
What observations has the World Bank made with regards to the quality of human capital in Botswana currently?
What we've noticed, especially when we speak to our private sector interlocutors, they tell us that many of the students that come out of the public education system are not able to really think quickly and problem solve in the workplace. They're not very creative. So there too, there's work that could be done to improve the quality of human capital that's entering the labor market so that these young people can find jobs.
What do you see as the road to creating the talent we need for a developed economy? How long, how big a task, and what resources will be needed for that?
Botswana already has an education sector strategy plan. So in some ways, the roadmap is there. The problem that we're all facing together is that the implementation of that roadmap, of that sector strategy plan, is behind schedule. Now there's a midterm review scheduled for that sector strategy, I believe, next year. And so that will be an opportunity to look at what has actually been done, but also more importantly, what hasn't been done in the existing roadmap. In terms of how much that would cost, your country spends a lot of money in education. 7 to 9% of GDP, or as some others have suggested, 25% of each year's national budget. That is a lot of money. We wish many other countries in the world would spend as much money as your country does on education. So it's not so much a matter of how much money is necessary. As I said before, it's about making sure that that money is being used as effectively as possible.
Can you explain for us comprehensively the direct link between health and human capital development, especially for those who don't fully understand or grasp the linkages there?
Health is quite a broad area, so let me focus in on the impact of sound nutrition. I think the first thing to keep in mind is that the critical period for investing in nutrition is in the early years of any child's life. And what we find is that over time, that of course affects brain development, and of course it affects cognitive function, the ability for one to think creatively, to learn in school throughout one's lifetime, even as an adult. So there we find that it's about 30% of children in Botswana that suffer from stunting and malnutrition. And a 10% reduction in that figure could result in at least a 3% growth in worker productivity and a corresponding growth in GDP. So there we can see quite a direct microeconomic link between investing in the early years of a child's life, ensuring that they have the right nutrition, and then seeing an economy grow on an annual basis. It really is quite powerful.
You also mentioned that just as in education, we're pouring huge amounts of money, but we're not actually seeing the returns that we would like just in the health sector. What have been the observations there? What can we do better?
You know, we did a public expenditure review around Botswana's use of its health budget with a very specific focus on HIV/AIDS. This was some years ago, and so it probably should be updated. What we did find is that the targeting of that spending is maybe not quite what it should be. Programs tend to be very broad-based. Money is spent on everyone, regardless of their need. That's an important area of reform. You know, we could introduce new tools to help understand who needs help, who needs a subsidy for health, let's say, or nutrition, but then who doesn't. And then as a result, adjust the subsidies accordingly. So there's a lot of work that could be done in terms of improving the spending on health.
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world, because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
The triple P model, which is being talked about. It has been talked about since 2009. We are wondering for
there was nothing on research and development, nothing on innovation. This is the time where we should be having conversations on the fourth industrial revolution. This is the time where we should be talking about how are we positioning ourselves as Botswana to be a digital economy.
I really wanted us to see, even if we had a tier-based model that talks about how we tax or how we incentivize Baba Nyenyane Bana, you know, we need to incubate them and protect them so that they can grow. I had nothing of that sort. It was just very generic about PPPs and all that. I mean, those are fine, but they apply to the big guys.
This is just a taste of some of the discussions that were had at the first National Bank of Botswana budget review workshops that were held to encourage small, medium and micro enterprise or SMME engagement. To commemorate a solid 25 years of hosting this event, the bank introduced morning sessions preceding their usual evening soiree. I cannot possibly cover all that was shared in these sessions, but I will attempt to give you some key learnings and overall highlights from the event. Along with impassioned entrepreneurs sharing their inspirational stories, were stakeholders from various sectors. First up was consultant Jonathan Hore of Opricon, who pointed out a very important loophole in the much talked about first-time homeowner tax exemption that was mentioned in the budget speech.
There's a particular section there which can be taken advantage of, because when it says citizen, then it doesn't necessarily mention the issue of the individual. If it mentions there is a certain loophole which needs to be closed so that it's only for individuals, because some people will use companies to own those houses, and they can go and register another company and then they still own it. They'll be first-time homeowners.
Still on tax was Mr. William Nkitsing, Acting Commissioner of Operations at Botswana Unified Revenue Service, to educate entrepreneurs on the developments announced regarding tax.
BES has engaged in overhauling all the revenue laws. And in the process of doing so, there's going to be a new act which consolidates the administrative provisions within the revenue laws. That act is going to be known as the Tax Administration Act. Aspects like record keeping, filing returns, coming to BES to pay, it might be a challenge, because some of the businesses, they don't even have physical business location. 1 minute in one corner of the street, but there are ways of dealing with them, and the taxes for those kind of businesses is always very convenient, less burdensome. Mostly a rate is set, an amount is set. Okay, when you go and renew your license for your taxi, pay 500 pula. We'll find ways of doing it, but so that you do things conveniently. You are coming to renew your license for your combi or your taxi, then you are required to pay 500 pula, which will go to BRS. You're getting your hawker's license, and you pay 50 pula. And I shouldn't sound cruel talking of a hawker's license, but I mean, all the residents have got an obligation to also contribute something for their upkeep by the state.
Entrepreneur Martin Stimela had a passionate response to Mr. Nkitsing's announcements during his presentation later in the day.
I'm sorry, but I do not buy that story. I want us to do better. I want us to do better because that was, you guys tell me the most innovative ways that you can catch out the micro and small businesses. No. Go back. I challenge you to go think of the most innovative ways that you can protect them, because they're the most vulnerable. I don't know what the stat is that government makes from small and micro medium enterprises, but I don't think you guys make much money from that. I know you make a lot of money from mining and the corporates and the big guys in terms of tax. If it's less than 1% that you're making from micro, because I know because the startup ecosystem is quite small in this country, these guys need every little bit to reinvest into their organizations. For me, I say don't tax them. Don't tax the micro and small until they are big enough.
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world, because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
Welcome back to First Issues as we continue to bring you highlights from the engaging exchanges that took place at the 25th FNBB Budget Review Seminar SME Workshops. Topic 2 at the morning event was procurement and tendering, the do's and don'ts, which was tackled by representatives from the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry and PPADB. CEO of Business Botswana, Norman Molele, also contributed to discussions on procurement, advising entrepreneurs to look beyond local government tenders to opportunities outside our borders.
I was looking at the website, UN. Procurement, UN is so huge. And it's open to any UN member countries, enterprises from such countries. And I'm finding that our enterprises, there are so few, if any. Those are opportunities we can be taking advantage of.
Session 2 of this event focused on industrialization and brought about some divergent views.
Being landlocked makes it even extra difficult for exporters to, facilitate. It makes it very difficult for them because they have to incur a lot of costs in transportation for them to reach the ports. And of course, there are those non-tariff barriers that they have to come to face with.
People talk about Botswana being landlocked. We think it's land-linked. I think there's sufficient transport infrastructure for you to compete regionally and effectively. We have the benefit of pretty strong sort of trade agreements such as SACU and SADC, which allowed the free flow of goods and services within these markets.
Clearly, Mr. Kunal Naik of Flowtech is more optimistic of Botswana's export capabilities, having seen his company become the largest PVC producer in Southern Africa after humble beginnings in Lobatse in 1998. He did, however, have some noteworthy points to make regarding what can be done to improve Botswana's export capabilities, beginning with clear immigration policies.
So, to give you an example, if you go to the US, they have an investment visa program. It's clearly stipulated what you need to do is invest $500,000, employ 7 American citizens, and you get an investment visa. And similarly is the case with South Africa. So I think there needs to be a bit of clarity so investors know what are the thresholds and what needs to be done. From a purely Botswana and local policy perspective also is licensing. You require a range of licenses to be able to effectively manufacture in Botswana or to have the right to manufacture in Botswana, one of these being the environmental licenses. I think these need to be fast-tracked. I think processing times need to be looked at so that the frustration levels for new investors is greatly sort of reduced and it's a more seamless experience.
Last but definitely not least were presentations from Mr. Nkosi Mwaba of Bolax Milling and Mr. Werner De Beer of Bokomo, Botswana, who laid out both the opportunities to be found and the areas in need of improvement when it comes to commercializing food production.
We have committed as millers, as an association, that we will buy every ton of white maize that is produced in this country. We are willing to put that commitment down on paper. So in other words, you are going into a business, if you're going to be a commercial farmer, you're going into a business that has a guaranteed market. I don't know many businesses where you will start a business and produce a good and have that good sold before you even start producing it. So in terms of opportunity, I hope you are with me when I say it is huge.
And very important is a single authority. On the wheat side, we have to talk to the Ministry of Trade in terms of imports. On the white maize side, we need to speak to the Ministry of Agriculture. So there is no single point where we say, we are millers, they are farmers. There's a single point where we can meet one another. So very important is in terms of closing these research gaps, who's going to take the lead on this? Is it going to be the farmers? Is it going to be the millers? Is it going to be ministry? Or is there an entity sitting here that says, well, there's a great opportunity to create a forum like that?
These were the first FNBB Budget Review SME workshops, and from what we witnessed, they are clearly not an event any entrepreneur worth their salt can afford to miss out on. You don't have to take our word for it. several attendees attested to this being the case.
I think really a lot of the value here is going to be in the connections that happen, across all the entrepreneurs that can understand what each other's doing, the access to people from the ministry or different sector heads, and just being able to understand what legislation is coming ahead and really tackle it and make those connections. I think that's great.
I was really fascinated to meet the gentleman from Flowtech, which is headquartered right here in Lobatse, but operates across Botswana, across Africa. So he spoke about how Botswana is just a population of 2.3 million. You have Africa, which is 242 million. You have SADC being 242 million. Then you have Africa as a whole being 1.92 million. So there's so much that we can achieve in Botswana.
Some great information about opportunities that are available in terms of growth industries. So all the way from farming to full-on manufacturing and exporting. And particularly more information that allows me to position my company to solve an actual need in Botswana and have the conversations around that.
Welcome to another edition of Own Your Day, Own Your Life with Professor Kiran Bhagat, where we are taught the moment-to-moment, day-to-day healthy habits that eventually improve your overall quality of life. Our resident guest has made a strong case against processed foods with their high sugar, salt and fat content. And you in turn have asked, with such a long list of things said to be unhealthy, is there a simple way to keep in mind what you should be reaching for in the grocery store?
It's to eat whole foods, mainly vegetables, and not too much. That's the solution. There's no diet that's required. The problem with diets is you go on them and you go off them. We want to make this a lifestyle choice, and the lifestyle is whole foods basically means a whole apple, a whole orange, a whole tomato. Not things that come in a can, not things that are liquidized into orange juice. So it's whole food, mostly vegetables. Pack your plate with vegetables, mostly fresh salads, for example. If you overcook the vegetable, you're leaching out some of the natural minerals and vitamins that are in there, and you usually chuck it away. And not too much on your plate. Your portion should be small. The Japanese have a wonderful lesson they teach their children, that leave the dining room table when you're still a little bit hungry. We tend to do the opposite, where our mums and dads used to say, finish your plate because somebody else is starving. We now need to teach our children and ourselves to leave a little bit of space in your stomach, so leave and get into the habit of leaving the dining room table when you're still a little bit hungry. That's the answer.
This program was brought to you by First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?